Welcome to Beyond Neutral. I'm your host, Paula Reed. I think of the journey of life as a road that we're driving down. We get to speed up on the straightaways, ease back on the curves, and I don't know about you, but I've certainly had the obstacle in the roadway that I never expected to see, and I had to either slam my brakes on or swerve to avoid hitting it. But whether we're talking about our careers or relationships or even just managing through life's phases, life is all about shifting and moving from one place to another. The challenge is that sometimes, in trying to get from where we were to where we want to be, we can get stuck while we're trying to shift. And we land in what I call the neutral space, where we're applying old ways of thinking to new situations. Join me and some incredibly inspiring guests as we talk about what it takes to shift into gear and get to where you want to be. Because here's the deal. If you're sitting in neutral, you're going nowhere. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Neutral. Very, very excited to have with me a guest today, Mike Shirey. Mike has amassed more than 25 years of working at executive levels within both retail and wholesale brands. He describes himself as someone who creates value quickly, capturing market share, and streamlining operations. He's demonstrated this ability in both established brands, including Macy's, Nina Shoes, and Nine West, as well as leading new category product launches in footwear with French Connection and Tahari, among others. All that was well and good, but in 2020, Mike, after some very serious reflection, decided to step out of the for-profit business and made a huge transition and moved into a role in the nonprofit world as the COO of Souls for Souls. For those of you who are not familiar with it, Souls for Souls has a mission to turn unwanted shoes and clothing into opportunity by keeping them from going to waste and putting them to good use, providing relief, creating jobs, and empowering people to break the cycle of poverty in the communities they serve. And in addition to this, Mike has the great misfortune, for the most part, of being a lifelong Cleveland, Ohio sports fan. So
true.
I would welcome to the show, Mike. I'm glad to have you here today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Paula. Thanks for asking me to join you. And it's accurately cast as great misfortune of being a Cleveland fan, but definitely an eternal optimist.
Oh, well, you have to be if you're a Cleveland, but yeah, you're always looking for what's on the horizon, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I was torn as to where to start this conversation, as to whether we start with the misery of your life never winning championships, or we start with the joy of what you've discovered over the last couple of years. So you get to pick. Is it the heartbreak or is it the joy?
I'll just share a quick story. We did have joy in 2016. The Cavs won one championship. So I'm happy to share. My kids will not have to endure the lifelong quest.
That's excellent.
They won.
Good for you. My kids, on the other hand, only knew championships because they grew up as New England Patriots fans and are having to realize what it's like to not just assume that you're going to be there every year. So I guess you get your misery now or you get it later, right?
That's right. That's right. That's a great.
There you go. So tell us, you've had a really interesting, I've obviously known you for years, knew you through your experience in the footwear industry. And tell me about, and then we started talking in 2020 when we're in the midst of the pandemic and you're kind of saying, I think I want to do something different. I think I want something more, right? Tell me a little bit about that process for you.
Yeah, it certainly was around that time. You and I have talked numerous times through the years and mostly in pursuit of the next great role in footwear, right? In terms of the community and how to continue to succeed. And it really has been a tremendous career for me within footwear and wholesale and retail. And one of the great things, obviously, most people reference is the people in the community. And that's really, really true. But around, I would say, a little prior to 2020, I started to wonder what the next move may look like for me. And began to realize that it may not include a wholesale footwear brand or company. And part of that, and I always reference the hamster wheel. A lot of folks in the retail and wholesale industry reference the hamster wheel because you are always on a 9-month out hamster wheel and looking and chasing and doing well. And I think I just started to get tired of the wheel. And part of what occurred to me pre-COVID was that I was realizing that the next big challenge I may be looking for wasn't necessarily launching or launching a brand or getting more shelf space.
And so you went on to a journey. Tell me what you were thinking about when you think about the next thing might not be that. What was the thought process around what it could be?
Well, it sort of presented itself within the COVID timeframe. And I think as many folks that you interact with, COVID was a huge shift, not only personally, but definitely professionally. And at that time, I had been working with the Aerosols brand to have it relaunched and it was going well, but COVID happened. And when that happened, my family, like a lot of families, had the opportunity to spend a lot more time together. And for the most part, that was good. School was shut down and we were playing a lot of board games and you're doing a lot of togetherness. And I did realize at that point that I missed that. And so that was definitely always important to me. Family's always been huge, but having spent time together became something where I was like, I wonder how this next hybrid economy, because that started a little bit to take shape.
Sure. Yep.
And I think the first thing to share is that you take stock of your skill set, take stock of what you're good at. And because you've been in the footwear and apparel and industry, retail, wholesale, or otherwise, it doesn't mean that that's only industry that you could be good at. It doesn't mean that that's the only path that you need to stay in. I think folks get appropriately comfortable and appropriately scared at the same time of what a change could look like. So I think that was the first thing I realized. I was like, I think there's things within running the businesses and running sourcing and running operations that you can do that would transfer. And I think that's a really important first step.
Yeah, that is. And that's interesting, Mike. That's a first step that a lot of people struggle with. They think of what they do from an industry perspective versus a skills perspective. I had a conversation this week actually with a coaching client and really struggling with, am I a sports guy or am I this? And I said, you're a creative executive who gained your experience in the sports world. And so that's not the only place you get to apply that. And that's a really significant realization for people to come to, number one, in order to be able to make that shift to go forward. So once you kind of realized that and you said, wait a minute, I have all of these things, how did that kind of create the momentum to then go forward?
Well, I think then you engage in your search, right? You engage in what are you looking for? And often when I hear people on the other side of a job search, they don't find what they initially started out looking for. And I think that happened to me. I started to search and engage and reactivate your network at that time. It was a little tricky because everybody was sort of down. A lot of people were retrenching, if you will, even employers and employees. And so for me, an opportunity opened up at Souls for Souls that I had seen on LinkedIn, which is a great platform. And it was vis-a-vis a connection that I had through the footwear industry and a gentleman named Buddy Teaster, who is the CEO at Souls for Souls. And so I reached out to him. They were looking for a COO. There was a role. The role had actually been created. And they had gone through some really significant change at Souls for Souls because their leader, David Graben, had passed away and they were looking to sort of restructure. So it was a big shift for them as well as it was for me. And we engaged in conversation that went on for about 3 months. And I would say that's another thing to be okay with is things don't happen overnight. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but that allowed me to understand and become a lot more comfortable with the organization and the team too. So time is good on both sides of that, and be okay that it's going to take a little time maybe to get to the right place.
Absolutely. And the time is beneficial to everybody. I tell candidates that constantly in search, that your time frame and the other person's time frame might not be the same. And the key is what you learn and what you develop and what insight you can gain through that process. So, but that's a tough process. So you went into Souls for Souls, made that transition into this nonprofit world. What were some of the learning moments for you in that?
Well, there was a lot of learning. And I guess the first part of it was wrapping your head around a different segment or type of industry. And people tend to bucket nonprofit all into one giant nonprofit conversation. But the truth is there's a lot of quite a variety of nonprofits. The beauty of Souls for Souls and the tie-in for me personally and professionally was that we work in the footwear and apparel space as well. So there was a lot of connectivity in the network and the product knowledge that I could bring to the organization, but it was an operational role, not a front facing role. So that was something that was really appealing to me, to start to learn how to just focus so much on the operation side of it. So again, skill set, toolbox, what can be applied. That was one of the great things that I found a really good synergy with. The organization and what we do, and that's a big shift in your mindset, is that you're working on being, our number one job is helping people, is helping create opportunity. It's creating opportunity and dignity and meaningfulness for folks in a variety of ways. So that's very different than what you do as a meaningful, successful wholesale footwear executive. And neither one is right or wrong. So you have to really get your head wrapped around, okay, I'm shifting to my worst day is helping someone and trying to get, and not only our end recipients, but helping companies prolong inventory, helping them create sustainable solutions. But it was a big shift of how to get your head wrapped around, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing daily, and we're leading teams. And the employee base is significantly different. The skill sets are significantly different.
Sure. And
leading teams that are, we always say that there's a head and a heart at Souls for Souls, and everyone, there's a variety of where people rate on head and heart. And so it's just a very different employee base, and magnificent team that we have, centered around the world. So I guess part of what occurred to me is that you're working with folks that are focused on a different desire than your past experience. And then the other big shift was you're working virtually. You're joining an organization at a time when people aren't going to an office. So you're trying to learn the organization, learn people, when you're not really allowed to be together. So those were two big hurdles. I mean, those were serious things to try and get over.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about, as you talk about the workforce being different and the head and the heart and all of that, and I think about this, I think in my own experience of suddenly being on a board for a nonprofit, and I'm used to, you walk in there and you're like, okay, we're going to do this. And all of a sudden, okay, wait a minute. They don't move that fast. They don't move that fast. They don't make decisions like that. And having to really dial back my own personality, my own expectation to say, okay, wait, it's not a 24-hour clock there. I think it's a 3-week clock, right? What was your experience in terms of the types of things that you had to adjust your thinking about, either what success looks like or what motivation looks like, or whatever it was? What were some of those things that kind of in the early days cropped up for you?
Yeah, without a doubt, it was slowing down. You make a great point, and not slowing down because of people's aptitude. You slow down because of the culture. You slow down because that it's a culture of listening, a culture of learning. It's a culture of helping, and that requires being aware of the fact that you're not just trying to write the next order. you are trying to understand who and where in the world, you may be helping people, including your team, who at that time was going through quite an emotional change. The first thing that you really learn is, okay, slow it down, become more receptive to people's input, and then bring what you bring, though, right? You have to be who you are, and you were brought onto the team for a reason. So it's not only to acclimate to the new culture, it's also to introduce what you have. So it was definitely a learning curve there. And I would say, I wish you had that skill set. Some people have it. So some people are incredibly open listeners and are able to, in New York and in the shoe world, listen, it's pace and pace and more pace. So, it was a pleasant change, to be honest with you.
That's excellent. In New York and in the shoe world, it's like, yeah, I hear you, but. Okay. It's like that, right? Okay. I mean, I have found that because I have worked in that industry so long, my biggest thing is exactly that. Sit, listen. Like the thing I work constantly on is wait for the sentence to be finished, right? Don't fill in the blank.
Yeah, totally.
Be patient. Ask another question. That's fascinating. So you've been doing this now for 2 years, right? Coming up on
almost 3. Yeah.
Almost 3 years.
3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Where's your satisfaction come from?
Well, it comes from a couple of different sources. I would say, first and foremost, I really enjoy creating the team and helping the team learn. I think that my emphasis has shifted from production, if you will, in whatever form that means for folks, to really trying to help people develop. I think Buddy has ingrains that in our culture in terms of like, how can we help people learn? So I think that that's a big one for me. And again, not always my focus in the past, but definitely my focus moving forward is a part of it is really to help people develop and learn. And I think I said it before, but our word today, we're helping people. We're helping people in general, create economic opportunity through repurposing product. And that is a really good way to go to sleep at night. That you're ultimately helping the earth become, cleaner, and helping people create more opportunity and giving dignity to kids that need new shoes. Here in the US, we have a program called For Every Kid. And a lot of your community, your constituents, Paula, donate product to us, and it gets repurposed in these great ways that is really, really amazing. And so that part of the holisticness and human side of it is very, very satisfying.
That's excellent. What was one of your kind of best moments where you saw the impact of your work?
Wow, there's been so many. I think early on, I would say about a year and change into it, I had the opportunity to take to visit Honduras, where we have tremendous partners. And I brought my son to be part of a trip down there.
How old's your son, Mike?
He's 19 now, but at the time he was 17.
Wow.
And it was just past, when everybody can travel again. So it was really, really a great experience. And I saw what we actually do, in terms of helping communities that, need help and need product, but they need to see people helping them. And they need dignity. All they want is to get back on their feet. And so in Honduras, there had been a couple of really devastating tropical storms, hurricanes. And we took that trip down there, and it was just simply amazing to be a part of it and to see ultimately where's the end result of this? Where's the human side? Where's the human elevation? And, we run trips with our donors. We run trips all the time with folks. Designer Brands is a great partner of ours, and we take their employees, and all of them come back and really share like how meaningful it is. And that's really hard to capture unless you're there, but it's really, really great. And I would say that, that's one of many. We do a ton of work domestically as well. We do distributions all around the country and around the world. But that was the first time I was like, wow, I get it. I get what we're ultimately doing with this.
How much of having your son be a part of that kind of drove that home for you?
Oh, it was great. It was a really great part of it. And I would say it was great for him too, because again, we all live in a bit of a bubble. I mean, inside the country, we live in a bubble. Inside your neighborhood, you live in a bubble.
Absolutely. Yep.
And that bubble had shrunk, right? We had gotten like so tight and together in terms of
yeah.
that you're breaking out and you're going out and you're seeing different parts of the world. And, Honduras is a tough place,
Sure.
It's not where most folks go for vacation. And, so that was part of it too, but it was incredibly, incredibly great for us to travel together.
That's interesting too, even coming off of COVID and thinking about, and I mean, COVID was impactful, right? I mean, we sacrificed a lot, but then you walk into a place like Honduras and you see sacrifice in a whole different, or, the impact of something in a whole different way. So even from a timing standpoint, that must have kind of given a perspective that maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise, or your son wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, it totally does. And it's one of the great things that we do at Souls for Souls. And one of the things that brings meaning to me in context of this conversation is, we really work at helping people. And what we do with even the Ukraine war relief,
Sure.
natural disasters, kids that are enduring homelessness here in the United States. When you have a chance to interact with folks that are going through, not first world problems, you really start to baseline importance. And, you don't get that in the course of what was my normal career very often.
Sure. Right.
And so I think again, that was part of what has kept me here now, I guess, for 3 years, is, you make the change and you look at a time frame and you say, okay, this is partially because, we need a job. This is partially because it's a tremendous opportunity. It's partially because it's new, but you stay for different reasons.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So work, what does work mean to you? One of the things I love to kind of pick the brains of my guests is the meaning of work for you, because I think work means different things at different parts of our lives, right? So I'm interested to know how what you get from work or what work means to you has evolved and changed through this process.
Well, it means a lot. Work is, I think, often identified with who you are. And I think we talked a little bit about that, how that's not totally the case. But I think, work is still work. We move over 5.5 million pairs of shoes and 2.5 million pieces of clothing every year. It is challenging. It's a thing that where you're team building and you're actively engaging with your group and your constituents and your donors. So it's still personal, it's still relationship based, and it's still success based. We measure ourselves on a value called economic impact. We measure it every day. We're disciplined on that. So work doesn't, some people think, oh, nonprofit, it's great. You're out there hugging a lot of folks and giving away stuff. It doesn't work that way. We're a 70 plus person organization and we still need to operate quite well. So I
How about for you personally?
It's still a job.
Sure. Yeah. You personally, in terms of the things that you measure success by now, how has that changed? Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty different, I think. And I look at things now just in terms of, like we talked a little bit about, development of the team, awareness of our mission and how we're helping others and our people aware of that. And then for me, I think, personally, things that used to be super important, and part of it's the fashion industry, and by nature, it's how you look, how what is material and things like that. That's become a lot less important, and I think that also takes time. And again, that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. People, the business of what that is incredibly empowering also. But I like to use a bit of a story, that I think a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, we were looking for a new car. Part of what does happen when you step away from that is, you evaluate things that you can do differently. And, we're looking for a car, and we landed on a Subaru. And I thought to myself, in a million years, I would not have ever said that the Subaru is the cool car. And
there you go.
Not the BMW, and I'm like, okay, this is where we're going. And
it's a new place.
Aside from the fact that Subarus are awesome vehicles, that was really sort of just a fun moment and anecdote for my wife and I to get there and be like, but really being completely cool with that and being like, all right, this is a great time for, what matters now is like how you are and who you're helping and what you're doing together. I think more so for me. And that does always happen for folks.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, good for you. I ask people a lot of times, on my show, I ask about their families because, I believe you're born into the family is the first organization that you actually ever have to thrive and participate in. Right. And so much of that kind of informs who we are going forward. And I asked you about that. And you said your mother, it's always the mother, by the way, but I'm just throwing that out there that she was a perfectionist, which was good and bad. And so I've got to ask you a little bit about that.
Well, you should probably ask my kids about that. It's true. My mom was a perfectionist from day one, which I think has a lot of value. It drives standards, drives accountability, but can also just make you maniacal sometimes. And again, part of what has really happened here for me through this career transition, I'll say, is dialing in on hearing perspectives rather than just demanding results, and understanding that how people think is not exactly the way you think. And it's okay to have a messy bed every once in a while. And that's, tying back to my kids, but also with the organization. A lot of the folks that are on my team, and at Souls for Souls are way more focused on hearing your story than getting to the perfect answer. And I've taken to use the phrase, perfection is the enemy of progress, which is a phrase that's out there, but I think it's true. And
it is true. Yeah.
It's okay to move forward and not have everything just totally tied up in a bow.
Just right. Yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent. So I always ask people, do you, if you were to give your younger self advice, what would the advice be, and how old would you have been when you have heard that?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of advice that I would love to have had given to me. Yeah. I think a lot of it goes to what we talked about, which is hearing perspective, listening, and having empathy for the perspective of where other folks are coming from. And that's something that I wish I had learned long time ago. And I think, I don't know, somewhere in my mid 30s, it would have been great to learn that, because I think you become a better teacher. I think you become a better leader. And so there's benefit in that. There's a lot of benefit in that. And so I think that's it's one of the things I would love to have had.
I might have to steal that line, Mike. I love that line. Listen for perspective rather than results. There may be a blog coming out about that. That's a great line. I'll credit you, though. I have no problem crediting where I get my ideas from. So that's excellent. So one more question. When you drive, or when you go on it, and you've gone to some great places, so this will be a good one. When you go to a place you haven't been, do you just plug it into your GPS and follow it? Or do you look at a map and get an overall big picture about where you're going, and kind of need to know ahead of time how that route is taking you, where that route is going?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely a map guy. So
good.
I am definitely a look at the globe guy. I'm definitely, even if I'm using a GPS, I like to look at the first picture and say, okay, that's how I'm going to get there. So my sense of direction will take me more than my phone will.
All right. That's great. Excellent. Tells a lot about somebody.
You want to globally know where you are, right?
Exactly. Well, I thank you so much for your time today. Great insights and information. Souls for Souls. What's the website? www.
Soulsforsouls.org.
SOULS. No, SOLES for SOULES. Souls as in the sole of a shoe.
Yep, it's soul, the shoe sole for your soul.
Your soul. Got it. Exactly. A phenomenal organization doing some really great things, and excited for you that this journey has ended up giving you so much satisfaction and joy, because I can see it in you. And thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Well, it's great to see you and talk with you again. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Take care. Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week on Beyond Neutral. I'm your host, Paula Reed. Make sure to visit our website, www.readandco.com, for this week's show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, I would appreciate you giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts or share it with a friend. Also, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. All of this helps to support the show. Have a great week.